A long time ago in a land far away, it was early in the morning, and the women were going to the tomb to take care of Jesus' body. You see, on Friday, all of their hopes and their dreams had been dashed as they had seen the man they believed who was the Messiah, the man who had healed their hearts, and some of them he had healed their bodies and cast out demons, as they saw him stripped and beaten and mocked and falsely accused and hung up on a cross. They saw him die. They saw him as his body came down off of the cross, and as they wiped the blood off of his body, they cried. And they saw the tomb and the stone roll over the entrance. And all of this was in their minds, and it was so dark, even though it was a bright morning like this morning, and the sun was just beginning to come up, and there'd maybe been some kind of earthquake or something on the way to the tomb, some rumbling, and the ground had shook, and when they got to the tomb, they saw soldiers, like dead men, scattered all across the ground. And an angel was sitting on the rock next to an open tomb, and the angel's appearance was like lightning. And I don't know what that means. Was he flashing, or was he just that brilliant brightness of the lightning when you see it flash across the sky? But whatever it was so majestic and powerful that the soldiers had passed out in fear. And the first thing the angel says to the women is, "Don't be afraid. He has risen." You see, he knew that when the women saw him and the empty tomb, their first thought was for Jesus. And he said, "Don't be afraid. He's not dead. It's not over." And then the angel tells them, "Go tell the disciples that he's alive." And I mean, this is like an experience that just doesn't compute with the basic parameters of humanity. First off, you don't find out that people are back from the dead, and you don't talk to angels. And as they're wondering, what does this mean? And is this true? And they're hoping against hope that it's real. They run right into Jesus. And when they recognize him, they fall at his feet and they worship him. You see, no longer is he Jesus, just their friend, or Jesus, the super awesome teacher. He is God. And as they worship at their feet, he says, "Don't be afraid. It is me." You see, when they fell at Jesus' feet in worship, they weren't terrified that he would strike them with lightning. They weren't terrified that he would throw fireballs out of his eyes or do something crazy. They were terrified that this was a dream, that he was a ghost, that it wasn't real, that somehow this was like a manifestation of their deepest desires, and if they touched his feet or hugged him, that he would just vanish. And he said, "Don't be afraid. It's me. I'm the same guy that walked on water. I'm the same guy that broke the bread. I'm the same guy that preached the Sermon on the Mount. It's me." And in this story, we have two amazing messages of don't be afraid. And the angel's like, "Don't be afraid. He's alive." And Jesus is not like the angel, okay? He's not flashing with lightning and glory and power. It's just Jesus. And he says, "Don't be afraid. It's me. Don't be afraid." There's a great verse in Zephaniah 3:17, and if you're doing the devotional with us on day 36, it's this story, and it talks about, Zephaniah says, he will quiet your fears with his love. He will quiet your fears with his love. And the angel, who is glorious and majestic and flashing like lightning, said, "Don't be afraid. He's alive. You don't have to be afraid because Jesus is out there." And then when they meet Jesus, he says, "Don't be afraid. It's me." and as he looked at them with love, and as his voice spoke to them with his love, and as they saw his eyes filled with love, he said, "It's me. I'm here." And that simple message took away their fears. They weren't worried about the Romans or the soldiers or the Pharisees. They weren't worried about their fears or their sins or what people might think. It's just good enough that he's here. Now, there's a lot of reasons to be afraid in the world. There's a lot of reasons to be dissatisfied with your life. And underneath our depression or our striving for success or our workaholism or our addictions is this deep longing and naked fear of rejection. If you're afraid of failure, if you're afraid of not being perfect, if you're afraid of not having enough, of not being enough, underneath that fear is the fear of rejection. Because if we're rejected, then what is left to live for? And Jesus speaks directly to that fear. He quiets us with his love and he says, "Don't be afraid. It's me. I'm here." Jesus, whose name means the Lord saves. Jesus, whose other name is Emmanuel, God with us, says, "Don't be afraid. It's me." And we've done 35 days of amazing, miraculous stories where it's like, don't be afraid, and the waters part. Or don't be afraid, and God shows up and shuts the lion's mouth. And today, it's the exact same thing without the fireworks. Don't be afraid. Jesus is here. And in your life, he might show up and he might part the Red Sea, or he might shut the lion's mouth, or he might walk on water, or he might just stand next to you and be with you. And that's enough. There were many people who were burned at the stake during the Middle Ages, and Jesus was with them. And even though he didn't do anything outwardly miraculous and change their circumstances, the miracle was that he was with them. And he quieted their fears with his love. So whatever you're going through today, I just want you to know, he's with you. You don't have to be afraid, because God's got this. And he promised before he went to heaven, he said, "I will never leave you or forsake you." Don't be afraid. Jesus is right with you. God bless.